Where's your favourite holiday destination?
Well, because we tour a lot, I like getting back and seeing the family. Getting back to Macksville, where I'm from, on the country farm with me mum and dad, and that's a destination that I love getting back to.
What's your favourite spot to watch cricket? If you're not out playing, where would you like to be?
I like being on the couch with a few mates, with a beer in hand, and just watch on TV. Nice and relaxing, have the aircon on.
If I gave you $5, what's the best thing you could go and buy with it?
Oh, I'd have to buy a little bit of cattle feed for me last cow I got there. I'd have to keep the cows going as long as possible, wouldn't I? On my farm back home.
To watch Phillip bat was outrageous at times.
Oh, hello. Hello.
It's gone again. That's a beauty.
That is sensational from Hughes.
He was like a dancer. He was like a boxer. His feet were lightning fast.
The footwork.
Finds the gap for four.
Fantastic to watch. It was like off middle stump. He'd be splaying him away. It was poetry in motion.
Through cover. This is a display.
Dangerous area, isn't it?
Then the slog sweeps come into play.
That's it. That's six. It's straight over the man's head.
When he was in the groove, he was one of the best players in the world. Undeniably.
Stand and deliver.
Macksville's a small town on the mid-north coast, New South Wales.
Greg's parents lived here, my parents lived here, we met, and we just thought we'd make our home here.
Very beautiful kids, yeah. It's one of those things, you have two boys and you've got to get a girl, so we just love the area. Like the kids, they could ride their bikes and do everything, and everybody knew everybody.
We had the E Street Warriors, all of the kids in the street, all the neighbours, all of our friends. There was just so many afternoons that we just were all together, and it was an extremely special time.
So I was born in Macksville Hospital just 2 days before Phil. The story goes that Virginia would tell us that if I'd cry, he'd cry, and vice versa. And we lived in the same street, so we've done everything together growing up. Yeah, and it just continued.
He was obsessed with his clothing, and he used to, when he did start to play cricket, everything was in the foyer, all ready for the following day of cricket. He used to clean his pads. He was just obsessed. His clothing was immaculate.
The backyard cricket, they were quite fierce battles. I mean, I just used to bowl to Phil, non-stop. If the wicket was the wicket closest to the house, he had all that open, but you only got 2 for that. And the back fence is 4. So he sort of had an area where he'd go, well, I can get 2 or 4 there. So that's probably why he had a quite strong cut and drive. I think all the dints are still in that fence. When I got really frustrated, I'd sort of start charging in from the chook pen, which is 15 metres away. So I'd come in with a taped up ball. Actually, he didn't know I used to keep a couple of separate, taped up balls.
About 8 or 9, you could just tell, and then probably even younger, just had that knack, and everyone used to get the shits because no one could get him out, even at that age, so there was adults bowling to him.
He got picked for inner district, which is pretty big. He was only 9 and you're playing up against 12-year-olds. Phil just started scoring runs. He got a bit older. He had to give up rugby league.
Yeah, he was a good footballer. Unreal, really, tough as nails. The under-15s, he actually got Player of the Year. He didn't even play in the grand final. I think he missed the last 3 or 4 games through cricket.
When he started making those school rep sides, and you had to start travelling, and yeah, so started many journeys, Phillip and I, in the car, and it was just I suppose half the time we were talking dribble, but, we ended up getting every game, so it worked. And, when we'd get back home, we'd stop in the car and he'd always put his hand up and he'd go, "Thanks very much, Dad." Every time he'd got 100 before he went away, he'd save the balls and write the scores on them. And we've kept it. I think there was 78 or something.
So we sort of both hail from the North Coast region in New South Wales, so there was always these whispers of this young kid scoring hundreds for fun. It was almost like a myth almost. It was exciting.
Everything was going good. He'd been in 17s and he tried out for the 19s one year and he probably should have been in it, but they said he was too young. Go home and concentrate on your schoolwork. Well, the Phillip school was turning up to see his mates all going to play sport. So that was his school.
What separated Phillip was there were a lot of good young batsmen, lots of skills, ability, but it was just his sheer bulk of runs. Before he moved to Sydney as a 17-year-old, I think he'd scored 70 hundreds in his life, which most people would dream about.
Phillip had 17 of the 20 clubs asking him to come and play for them. And it was mayhem. Every club calling him and I said, okay, look, we need a quiet off-season. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get you to come and play the last game of the season for West and we'll put this to bed. They'll know you're with us and let's then concentrate on cricket. I said to him, mate, there's no pressure on you. Just enjoy the game and we've got a party afterwards for the end of the season. Last over, scores are tied. Phillip's 140 not out. And he's had a day, right? First ball, no run. Second ball, no run. Third ball, no run. I'm thinking, cut, mate. Fourth ball, no run. Fifth ball, no run.
Like the West officials and they're looking around saying, where did this guy come from? I was like, what's going on? And they come to the last ball and he's just gone, thanks very much, and put it over the fence.
The blokes have rushed onto the field and it was like we won the final last game of the year, last versus second last. Let's go with the last over. He goes, Braz, got to put on a bit of a show.
To see a young kid come here with so much confidence, he just said, I'm going to smack every bowler. You just knew he was at a different level to every other cricketer.
He was loved at the club from day one. I think he saw the club as a big family for him. And again, country kid that moved to the city, there was a lot of unknowns for him. So we built a really strong friendship.
A country boy who wanted to be exactly like Michael Clark. That was Hughesy. The earring, had the dyed hair. He loved Pup. When we were growing up, Pup was the man. So he wanted to be in the city, he wanted to go out, wanted to be with boys, but it never got in the way of his cricket. Like, cricket was number one.
I can actually remember the first time I met Hughesy. They'd throw a whole heap of club teams together to provide a bit of a conduit between club cricket and state cricket. And there was this name on the team sheet, just got picked from nowhere, P. Hughes. He walks out, he's got the fake diamond earring, the stocky legs, the socks pulled up, the hair all... I'm thinking, hang about, we've been duped here. And so everyone's eyes are focused on this kid that we've heard can bat a bit and, you're throwing some balls in warm-up and then you hear the sound off the bat and the high pickup and you think, shit.
The first real interaction that we kind of had was we went to the academy together and had an absolute ball. I remember he roomed with Finchy and spending a lot of time in their rooms.
Anybody who was around him loved his company, but also he'd make everybody laugh. He didn't mind taking the piss out of himself if it meant that other people laughed. From day one, we just got on like a house on fire.
He was a pretty captivating character. He knew everyone at the pub knew him. I think there was a bit of a buzz in the area, but his goal was to play professional cricket. We all knew it was going to happen. And then the opportunity came for him to make his Shield debut, which he was incredibly excited about.
Without realising it, we had a pretty golden era in New South Wales at the time, but everyone was kind of competing with other. Hughesy would be scoring runs, Smithy would be scoring runs, I'd be scoring runs, Davey would be scoring runs. And then when Hughesy got in there, it's first-class cricket, it's not easy. He took him down.
He's just brought this vibrancy to the group and this energy. It's hard to describe. We were all drawn to him in a way because he was cheeky, but he was very humble, and he was very, very likeable.
Change rooms are built around alpha males, but he had this ability to get people's guard down with that affable kind of, how you going, cuz, you know, I'm just a country boy.
Are you smarter than the rest of the team?
No, I'm probably the dumbest.
You know, deep down, he was as driven as anyone I've ever seen, but he had this ability to draw people into his way of seeing the world, which was very relaxed, very simple, but endearing.
And he was also tough, like super tough. I remember playing MCG against him here when he was a kid, and Shane Harwood hit him in the ribs early, and he just got peppered for a session, just stayed in the contest and loved the contest.
I think we really stood up and took notice when he scored that century in the Shield final. Youngest player ever to score a century in a Shield final.
I was glued to it, just seeing the way Hughesy batted and the way he was carting around those Victorian guys.
That's full again, and that is a lovely shot. He's looked extremely good this morning, Hughes.
When he's going, when he's scoring runs, he scored so fast.
To come up against an experienced attack, you know, Shane Harwood had played a lot of cricket, done well for Victoria, Dirk Nannis as well, who was quick, and then Peter Siddle, who was just starting out, but was probably as quick as he was at any stage of his career. The wicket started to deteriorate. Bryce McGain had footmarks to bowl into.
Phillip Hughes, you little beauty, 100 in a Pura Cup final. 19 years of age, Phillip Hughes, congratulations.
It was a magnificent 100, and just to see the elation and joy that it meant to him to do it at such a young age.
I think everyone saw that Shield final and thought, we've got an Australian player in the making right now.
He was one of those guys who was almost too good for first-class cricket. I mean, you talk to anybody who saw that innings in Hobart where nobody else can make a run. It's impossible.
The first innings, Hughesy watching him bat, and I got out and I was just like, man, that was hard. And he was just flying him everywhere, just playing the way he does.
Hughes just played a different game. There were 3 slips, 2 gullies, a backward point, a forward point, a guy on the point fence and a fly slip. And they'd just bowl outside off. And he just thought, well, bugger it, if they're going to bowl there, I'm going to hit it there. And that kind of summed up his attitude. So I think 90 and 100 in scores of 170. I'm sure there was some statistical record broken of portion of runs scored by a single player.
Gives himself some room again, and that is spanked through the offside. 2 boundaries from Hughes. Good start for him.
Hughes just keeps getting runs at state level. He's one of these kids that Greg Chappell's told us about. You don't leave them in state cricket too long because they're ripe, they're ready to go, and you've got to throw them in the deep end. We get to the end of the summer, there's a spot there for an opener, and it's down to Phil Jakes, who's a very, very good cricketer, has a lot of respect, but then there's this kid, Phil Hughes. It's one of the all-time bat-offs, really. There's a place in that test side, and whoever succeeds in this circumstance is going to get a call from the selectors, and they're going to get on that plane to South Africa, and they're going to open the batting for Australia.
There's always pressure when that's on. If you know there's actually a spot up for grabs, there is pressure in those games leading up because you think, on the one hand, you go, God, this is my chance, and often the harder you try, the worse it gets. There was headlines and there was perceived pressure about who's going to be the next opener, who's going to come in, and he still went out and just went about his business.
It was billed as a bat-off in the press, but it quickly turned into a knockout in terms of the way Hughesy went about it, because I think he got 150 in the first knock and then something like 80-odd in the second. You know, Jakesy was a phenomenal opener as well, but I think at that point in time, it just highlighted what we were seeing and witnessing evolve right in front of our eyes.
I was actually in the house, like, with him when he got the call. And then he got off the phone. He sort of like threw the phone up in the air, and he sort of threw his arms out and said, like, I'm going to South Africa. We sort of did like a little bit of a brother dance. Like, I was just happy for him because like seriously, like it's a big effort.
Senior players always think, will this technique hold up? As the bowls get faster, as the wickets get bouncier, pick your reason not to get excited. And he debunked all of those right through that season. And then the next question was, well, can he do it at Test cricket? What happens when Dale Staines bowling and Morne Morkel? Well, guess what? They tried the same thing and they got the same result.
I think we were still the #1 ranked Test team in the world, but we were obviously going to be vulnerable on the back of a lot of our champion players sort of having retired the summer before. Yeah, you could feel that, maybe the grip that we had on World Test cricket for such a long time might have been about to get a little bit harder.
We were never going to be able to replace them straight away, but we hoped that we could find some players that had the character traits and the ability and the skills that would allow them, one, to initially survive the pressures and the challenges of international cricket, and then over the journey thrive.
I'd seen footage, I'd seen highlights, and he's the one that we had heard the most about. And for the simple reason that he was a 100 maker. I think that's the best way to describe him. He made hundreds at every level that he played.
I remember sneaking down in the hotel to bang on his parents' door because Mum and Dad and the siblings have come over from Macksville. I've opened the door and who greets me but Phillip, like this, arms folded. What are you? Oh, I was just going to come and talk to your mum and dad. Well, I don't know about that. And so he was this little kid from the bush and I saw that toughness in him. I wasn't getting past him. No one was getting to Mum and Dad or his brother or his sister because he was the family's protector. He'd led them into this world and he's looking after them.
Hughesy had shown throughout his developmental career that every time he moved up a level, he usually found a way to do pretty well. He enjoyed the contest, he enjoyed the idea that he was playing on the biggest stage.
Phillip Hughes making his debut, so what an opportunity for him and what a big moment. Opening at the Wanderers in the bull ring for his country.
Oh no! What a way to start! Desperate moment for Phil Hughes and a glorious one for Dale Steyn.
Short delivery. Shot really wasn't on in the first over.
Oh, boy.
I think when it happened, everyone's sort of looking at each other like, did that just happen? First over of Test, I think. You probably raise an eyebrow at the start, think, oh, this is his first Test. Doesn't mean enough to him. He's going out and doing that.
Dad didn't say anything for a while. Well, it was a good couple of hours. Yeah, not a good shot, Phil.
The back page was not Boy Wonder, it was Boy Blunder. Oh, I cringed when I saw it.
Yeah, it happens though, doesn't it? Happens. I don't think anybody was too concerned, to be honest. And that was the other thing about Hughesy. He never got too down. Yes, he'd get upset or disappointed in his own performance, but he never fell too low. Come out in the second innings, coming off a duck in your first innings. Not a nice place to be, but he didn't change his game.
He's away with the boundary, so he'll feel a lot better about this.
We've seen the shot that Hughes certainly likes to be able to play, and that's the cut shot.
His cutting and driving through the offside was probably as good and as crisp as anybody's that I'd seen at such a young age.
I mean, it was hard enough as an experienced player, let alone a kid making his debut at the Wanderers in a hostile environment away from home.
Oh, what a stroke. That is some reply. If you're in the midst of a battle like this and you can respond like that, you've got something about you.
We could have been bowled out for bugger all. Like the conditions were woeful and the way Ponting and Phillip toughed that out. That's probably the best hour and a half of cricket I'd seen.
And that's another extraordinary stroke. In fact, he's done well to reach it, but at least he goes the whole hog once he goes.
That Test match and that Test series could have gone the other way quickly.
Oh, yeah. Incredible cricket. Oh, Jacques Gallis. Another strike.
When things were falling apart in the second innings, we needed someone to stand up, and the little fighter that he was did enough to get us a big enough lead.
He likes it there. He's played it really well. He's gone for it. There's nobody out in the deep and he's hit it all the way. Lovely shot from Phil Hughes.
As we got into the test matches in South Africa, I think everyone got a really good sense and understanding of just how good the kid could be.
I mean, that attack in the modern era will go down as probably one of the best attacks that there was at that time. So the way he handled himself was superb. You know, we had no idea what was to come.
That's too close to leg stump and too full. Turned away nicely for 4.
We tried to get together at the Activate Cricket Academy. Everyone piled in with beanbags or whatever pillows, and we watched. So it was really exciting for us, you know, everyone, you know, to see him do well.
I think after town watched it at the pub, and I just stayed at home, and you know, it was unbelievable.
Thrashed by Hughes. He's very quick onto anything loose. Look at that, Darryl. Look at that. Oh, we call him nuggety and gritty and effective, but he's got a bit of flair about him too. And this is a real problem for the South Africans.
South Africa, you know, they had an experienced team, and Callis was there and Graham Smith as skipper. They had no idea where to bowl to him.
He's now got 7 fielders on the offside, and Hughes keeps finding the massive gaps on the leg side.
Through, and it'll go for 4. That'll be 50 for Hughes. It was whipped off it, he slashed it past point, and a second half century for young Phillip Hughes.
But when Paul Harris came in the attack left arm offie, then that was when his eyes really lit up.
In the air, safely away for 4. Up in the air, over the top, all the way. Yes, it has. A bold blow in the 90s takes him to within 1 of the century mark.
1 away from what would be a maiden 100 in Test match cricket.
Here's Harris to Hughes, 99. Goes in the air, it's going out the ground. What a way! What a way to get to your first Test 100. Phillip Hughes in just his 2nd Test, having got a duck on debut. Look at the reaction from Ricky Ponting. His elation is visible for all to see, and warm applause not only from the Australian dressing room but from all in at Kingsmead. It has been a super knock.
Running down the wicket, just a smile on his face. It wasn't relief because he knew that he was going to have a big impact on cricket, but it was like another cheeky grin. He's like, well, it was only a matter of time before I did this to a world-class attack.
I still remember saying to people, you'll double up here. Because that's how he was. He didn't have a lot of self-doubts.
Again, this is exactly the same thing from Hughes.
Driven through the covers for 4. There's the half volley.
Hughes down the ground with power and no little panache. Another blistering stroke from Hughes. He's just a little pocket dynamo.
I was batting with him. Morkel and Stain had a crack at him from the change room's end, and they both, back to back and went after him with some short stuff. It started to get a bit heated. One particular occasion, I think it was Morkel had something to say to him, and then I followed all the way down and went down to Hughes, and I just looked at him and said, how you going with this? And he looked at me and he said, I fucking love it, mate. I love it. And that would have been as tough a fast bowling as he faced. Morkel and Stain and Callis and the guys that they had in that lineup, but he got through it with a big smile on his face once again.
It's in the air and it's gone through the gap. It's all the way to the boundary for 4. A marvellous achievement by Phillip Hughes. He gets 100 in each innings and is the youngest player to do so. 20 years old and 98 days.
To do that, and then to find out you're the youngest Test player ever to do it, yeah. You don't do it for those things, but we look back now. You sort of think of him, yeah.
I generally couldn't believe that he backed it up. He did that one pretty easy.
Oh, my word. Clears the leg. This is 150 in emphatic fashion. That is a massive 6. Look at that. And the reaction from the dressing room applauding Phillip Hughes. He has smashed South Africa's premier bowler with the new ball, back over his head for 6 to bring up the 150. What a stroke. What a stroke. Not out of the manual. It's just an almost baseball-style bludgeon.
We just thought that was the emergence of a star. I think that's what we all felt then. When you think about the team that we had, trying to beat them at home and regain our ascendancy, if you like, as the top team in world cricket, sometimes it just takes one innings like that from someone at a critical time to nail a moment, to nail a day's play, to nail a test match. And if you nail a test match, quite often that's the difference in a series.
Oh, what a way to end. Steyn has charged indiscriminately. He's been undone. Kadich gets his 3rd. And it's a normal service resumed as Australia keep their #1 post. They have beaten South Africa here at Kingsmead by 175 runs. They have clinched the series.
It's the best memory I have from the game. All the boys all ran in together in the middle of the wicket, shook each other's hand. Then I thought, I've got to go and see this. So I actually walked off by myself about 40 metres ahead of the rest of the group and got close to the boundary line. And then I looked back and they all had stumps. They all had their arms around each other. And for me to be able to see what it meant to those young guys, win a test match, win a series for the first time, that's the memory that sticks most for me. So it was pretty cool.
I'd be lying to say if I remember too much of the celebrations, but we had enough time to unwind and celebrate our success.
Actually, that was one of the all-time great nights.
It was a big night in Durban and probably carried on into Cape Town when we had, I think, 10 days off in between the 2nd and 3rd test. So from memory, I reckon Hughesy gave it a pretty good nudge.
It was the morning of the last test, and I came down for breakfast and I was walking through reception to go to the breakfast room. I look over and 2 blokes are just wandering aimlessly through reception. It was Hughesy and, I probably shouldn't name another bloke, it was Peter Siddle, walking through reception. I sort of looked and I said, what are you doing? And they said, where's the breakfast room? Because they hadn't been to breakfast in the whole week in between tests. They had no idea where the breakfast room was.
Yeah, Hughesy loved the celebration. I think I learnt that pretty early on when we won the Pura Cup in 07-08. We won the Champions League in 2009 in India, which he played a big part in. And then it just sort of kept continuing. Wherever he was playing, there was success. I don't think it was a coincidence because, when you get highly talented young players coming into a group, it brings everyone else with them for the ride.
Played that debut series in South Africa, scored 70 in the 2nd innings of his first game, back-to-back hundreds. After that, he went to England to play county cricket, absolutely demolished county cricket, highest run scorer by far. I think, whoo, this guy's unstoppable.
I suppose for myself, if all your signings could be that good, then we're on a winner here. But no, he was just a brilliant addition to the room. The fun and enjoyment that he got from playing cricket sort of really came through to the rest of the players too. To score 100 on debut at Middlesex sort of highlighted how he could grab moments, and he was just outstanding.
Yeah, he'd made runs in county cricket, which is a pretty good indicator, but it's a bit like first-class cricket in Australia. There's a lot of players that have been good first-class players that have never quite cracked it at the international level, and that's the same with playing in England.
Every time you play for your country, it's always excitement, but around the Ashes, there's just always that little bit extra excitement around, and it's just a great feeling.
When you have a bit of success, teams will obviously start breaking down any little chink in the armour that you might have, and I think that's what happened here. We knew that they'd be ready for him because of how dangerous he was. We knew how thorough they were with their preparation.
First ball after lunch, Freddie Flintoff, and about time too. Really needs to tuck Hughes up. Yeah, that's what he won. That's what England have been missing, a bit of aggression. Out, that's out. That's an inside edge. Flintoff's got his man. And what a great bit of test match cricket this has been since lunch. Fabulous. Good shot. That one is out. Beautiful catch from Andrew Strauss. It's the most cracking cricket actually being played by everybody.
Now, does Strauss catch it cleanly? Well, the cameras always cloud the issue.
He was unlucky. He got caught on one that might not have quite carried. That's where the whole booing of me actually started in the UK, because I carried on a bit with the umpires that day about that particular dismissal.
Selections that time were horrible. For be clear on that, I just could not believe they dropped him at that time. The most short-sighted thinking, his technique is not up to standard. I'm like, what do you mean his technique's not? He's scored the most runs out of anyone in the world right now in the last year. How's his technique? So he got screwed over a little bit there and definitely hurt his psyche.
That was a brutal call, and I remember saying to him at the time, I really feel for you, and having been through all that in the past, there's a couple of ways you can go about it, but he took it on the chin and copped it, even though I don't think it was probably the right decision at the time.
I remember a conversation with Andrew Hilditch, who was the chairman of selectors at the time, and he talked about some of the things that he was seeing which reminded him a little bit of the times that he'd been under pressure from the West Indies fast bowling attack. He felt as though that hurt him mentally and had an impact on how he played in the future, sort of thing. So he saw some similarities between what Hughesy was going through against England.
I was incredibly disappointed he got dropped. That said, you look back in the history of Australian cricket, they all get dropped. That's when you find out about people.
He'd ring up, he'd have his cry, and then just something so, well, I'll show him.
Oh, that's a super shot. That is a great shot. That's 6. Phillip Hughes, he's got one back of a length and he's just hit it straight over mid-wicket. Great shot.
He works on his batting. He becomes a better batter. He did get a little cameo in New Zealand when Shane Watson pulled up lane before a test match. That was a fantastic innings.
Absolutely threshed it through cover. Well, straight away, thank you very much.
I sensed that he was thinking, well, I'm going to make the most of this chance, so he just started going hell for leather. So I just thought, I'm happy to sit down the other end and watch this.
Oh, swung away, and it's gone all the way.
Oh, that's 4 more. I thought he was going to be a long-term test player from the start. And I always felt that he was going to be good enough to overcome the technique stuff. I mean, everyone talks about Smith being someone that hit a lot of balls, and Justin Langer hit a lot of balls, and Steve Waugh hit a lot of balls. No one hit as many as Hughesy. Hughesy, he loved it. He loved batting. He loved the preparation side of it. He loved trying to find ways to get better. And I know he did a lot of stuff, even not in the nets with Justin Langer. Did a lot of fitness stuff and discipline stuff.
He said, can I come and stay with you for a week? I said, what for? He goes, let's train. I'll train with you. As a person, my barometer is, what does my wife and kids think of him? And they loved him.
Langer fell in love with him. Langer just saw this guy who, he'd make him run 10 hundreds and he'd wipe the sweat from his brow and say, 10 more, coach?
He said to me, JL, I'm not here just to hit some balls. Let's go hard. It was like an old Rocky movie. We ran on the beach, got in the boxing ring, we hit balls, and I'd wear him out, and I'd say, that's it. And he'd go, come on, let's keep going, mate. Let's keep going, bruz. I tested him. I wanted to see how tough he was and how hungry he was, and he was up for everything. He wanted to get better off his body. He wanted to get better with the short ball. He wanted to do all the hard stuff, and he did the hard stuff, and you couldn't break him down. Let's go back for more, bruz.
Sri Lanka's a tough tour. The test matches can be gruelling, and I think they're particularly hard when you're not going well. Phillip's got another chance, and he hasn't exactly grabbed it with both hands.
Oh, it's edged and caught.
Oh, and asking the question that he's given him.
He's missed out the first couple of tests, and there's a lot of pressure on him going to that third test at Colombo.
That's well played. That's a very good shot. He likes it out there.
Well, it's wide and driven well. He's starting to blossom, confidence growing.
Spinner came on, he started slog sweeping him and taking him on the way Hughesy played spin.
Hughes going over the top, and it's going all the way. A positive approach up front against Ranganahara.
Oh, he's had a go at that one too, down towards mid-wicket. One bouncing over the fence for 4.
It was a really cool innings. It's just classic Hughesy.
Phil Hughes sitting on 99, and there have been quick runs. They all await. Full and driven. That square drive will certainly fetch him a couple. 2 full by Wellagadra, and congratulations to Phil Hughes. It's been a long time coming, 2.5 years. And that double will get Phil Hughes to his century. Well played.
You could tell when he scored the 100 in the celebration, particularly overseas, it meant a lot, because I reckon if he didn't, potentially would have been dropped again straight away.
You could see some of the technical changes that he'd made, certainly the things that he was trying to work on. Consistency at the top of the order is what we're after, and I think everyone felt that Hughesy was going to be the right man to do that.
David Warner, Phil Hughes, they're going to open the batting for a decade. Then along comes Guptill and Martin.
Knocked him over. What a catch.
Another one in there, this time taken, Phil Hughes.
There we go, and that's it. That is the end of Hughes.
Oh, yes, that's out. That's out. Martin in the perfect place, and again, Phillip Hughes perishing in that slip cordon.
Just kept getting out literally the same way. But it's 2 test matches against New Zealand. We got another 4 coming up against India. It's like, just put that aside, selectors. Yes, one bowler had his match. Cool. Let him go. Play him on. He's a future Hall of Famer. Coming back from being dropped again into the New South Wales side, it was a tough place. Both of us were like, something needs to change. And most of the players said at the time was like, we need a new direction, we need a new coach. TB went for the job the year before, Trevor Ballas. Didn't get the job. And both me and Hughesy were like, well, the writing's on the wall. Either get TB in here or we're leaving. And it was pretty much it. And they didn't. They're like, no, we're going to give the coach one more go. And we're like, we don't feel like we can play again for Australia in this environment. So me and Hughesy both left.
He was really down and not happy with his own world. And I learned from those early times of really getting to know him that every time he went home to Macksville, he came back a different person. And so going home and being on the land and being with his family and talking to his cows and his bulls and all that, that was critical to giving him the best environment to be an incredible cricketer.
When you go to Macksville, you understand the romance of that Phil Hughes story much better. On that river, the trucks come down the road, the 2 pubs. It's as rural as all get out. You know, the banana farms, the cows. And in one of the 2 pubs, they've just got this whole wall devoted to Phil Hughes and his exploits. And every single person in that town knows of Phil Hughes. Because imagine having someone like Phil Hughes among you when you're in a little country town like that. Yeah. That town loved him. He loved that town too. I mean, that's where he always said, I'm going back to Macksville when this is done.
The first opportunity he ever had to get back away from what he was doing was back here straight away. And it wasn't, if he had a spare minute, he wouldn't sit around in Sydney. He'd be back here as soon as he could.
It was completely different, to be honest, seeing Phil in Sydney compared to Macksville, because he would just talk to everyone. Yeah, everyone knew him. Everyone had a story about him. They were very proud.
And I think people probably took away the cricket side of things a little bit too, and just seen him as the Phillip that grew up here. And it might have been his release to go, well, I'm back home now. I don't have to worry. I can switch off.
I had a couple of weeks off and went back and caught up with my family and close mates back home, and, spent a bit of time with Dad out in the farm, and, it's just totally different to playing cricket. So it's just to relax my mind, and then you get back into, serious training back in Sydney. There's a couple of things I wanted to work on, and I had to nail them down.
We're basically having a problem that when Phil was getting body line balls in that blind area, he'd go back and land on his front foot. He wasn't going back and landing on the back foot and then turning the hip, which brought in the pull and brought in the hook. So we went to the camp where Mitchell Johnson had just come back. He was bowling rockets, eh? Johnson comes flying in. Bowls one short, bang, pull shot. Everyone in Cricket Australia stopped and went, well, that's different.
My job was to work out what were the things that weren't working in his environment and weren't working around him and focus on fixing that. We managed to used some relationships to get him an opportunity at Worcester. And Worcester was a small county in comparison to some of the big mega powers, but it was perfect for a Macksville boy who wanted to just go and play cricket.
Phil joined us at Worcester for the 2012 summer. We knew his talent's coming in, but when you actually see it in the flesh, it almost hits home a bit quicker. He got 100 on debut in the 40-over comp and single-handedly sort of led the batting through our T20 competition. The overriding sense he just got back to enjoying his cricket, loving the environment he was in and playing with a smiling face.
He rocked up and I get a phone call straight away. He said, "I love this place, Dad." He said, "Oh, the guys are similar age and they were casual." And it showed in his performances. He really scored some runs there, and you could tell that he was happy.
That preceding summer, I started to think about whether there was an alternative state that would be a better environment for him. Similar to Worcester, Victoria and Tasmania were both super enthusiastic for him to consider playing there, but it was South Australia that we really landed on. Enormous influence from Greg Chappell in helping understand where perhaps Phillip's game would be best suited to.
A good thing can be changed. It can be tough at times, but I take it as a huge leap in my book to, move somewhere else. I'm only 23 now, and I feel like I've got a lot to offer.
Hughesy just brought in this attitude of, well, what are you waiting for? We're better than them and we're as good as them. I'll show you. I'll go out and make hundreds for you. You just jump on my shirt tails and we'll go along for the ride here.
He was a mentor to a lot of young guys, and yeah, it was the same for me. Like, I naturally looked up to him. Heady gravitated towards him.
He had a significant impact, I think, in hindsight, on the likes of Travis Head.
Heady is as closest Hughesy that I see. Even the way Heady plays, his cut shots and stuff, and they're both very similar. The worse a wicket gets, the more in the game they are, because they just start flying away. And good balls, they're trying to hit for four, and they put a lot of pressure back on the bowlers.
He led and dragged the group along just through performance and by having fun and enjoying the contest and enjoying the challenge.
I remember he got 100 in Melbourne. And we get back, and he's straight on the phone to his old man because the Macksville show was on. And he just peeled off another first-class 100, which, a lot of people dream of doing that. And all he was worried about was if his heifer had won at the Macksville show, which it had.
We spoke mostly about the cows when we were batting. He thought that was the topic of conversation in the middle of a test match, in between overs.
Vividly remember sitting at sort of breakfast, having a bacon and eggs, and he'd come up with a picture of a bull on his phone and say, "Mitchie, look at the size of the balls on that thing."
He would talk about post and rail, fencing for hours and hours. He was looking to redo his farm, so he'd research. He'd go, "Bros, what do you think of this one?" I said, "I don't know, mate. But do you like this one better or this one?" Then he'd call Greg. He'd be like, "What do you reckon?"
He'd ring, how many times? It could be 3 in the morning, could be 5 in the morning. I go, "Phillip, do you realise it's 5 a.m. here in Macksville? Oh, I just need to hear your voice, Mum."
The most family-orientated person I think I've ever met. He was somebody who talked about his family constantly.
And I think everyone else knew it as well. Like, he was always going to go back there, I think.
Scoring hundreds meant longer deals, more money for him to buy cattle and fencing. Yeah, it was obviously about looking after his family.
In Phil's eyes, he was a farmer. No one can convince me of anything else. I mean, this is a guy living two dreams.
Comfortably, even then when I watched him play at South Australia, score a truckload of runs that season, I'm like, man, this guy's so good. Like, he's just the man. I put him above Steve Smith at the time. He was the pinnacle, and used to prove it time and time again.
Yet again, Phillip's earned himself a test place on the back of a great first-class innings. People who saw it were ringing you and telling you, he looks great, he's ready to go, get him back in the side.
Yeah, I remember it very well, that century. I was at the game. He batted across 2 days for about 4.5 hours, and it really was defining. He showed that he matured because, the free-flowing game was there, but he had his head down and he batted like a guy that wanted to bat for days and prove that he was the right opener for Australian cricket.
Phil Hughes has worked very hard in his games, had a big summer so far, making a lot of runs in all falls of the game. This is a big occasion for him.
Oh, that is sensational from Phil Hughes. And there's a pull shot in the air, but safe.
Starting to fire up, Phillip Hughes. Oh, that's a beautiful shot. Made some room, brings up his 50 with a glorious square drive. Superb stroke. His first Test 50 in Australia. Big comeback. Well played.
It's nice to be back. It's been, I suppose, 12 months. You know, boys been great and made me feel welcome, and I suppose to get runs personally, on a personal note, it's been outstanding.
Yeah, I remember that game really well. I'm pretty sure it's the game that I bowled and he kept as well.
Well, look at this. Phil Hughes is putting the wicket-keeping gear on. And Matthew Wade with the ball in his hand.
I didn't know who was more excited, Wadey bowling in a Test match or Hughesy keeping. Because he kept, when he first came to West, he was keeping, and juniors he was keeping as well, and he thought he was a brilliant wicketkeeper, but he wasn't. He was horrible, but we didn't have any other option.
I love that footage just because of, I think it just sums up Hughesy's personality on the ground. Like, you can't take that smile off his face. Cheeky, but, like, so lovable at the same time.
Get that there, Wado.
In the middle, Hughesy was everything you can imagine that Hughesy was. He was relaxed. You always got the sense that he was in control, but he always just loved it.
Oh, that's a superb stroke. That's 50 for Phil Hughes back in his hometown. Wonderful round of applause.
Beauty, real beauty.
You know, batting partnerships are these weird dynamic. It builds trust really quickly. Those moments are, you know, quite intimate and personal, and people are quite vulnerable in the middle, and you get to see the best and worst. And often with Hughesy, you got to see the best.
Like all great batsmen, I don't think he understood sometimes how difficult the game was. He'd just be like, yeah, just slap it through there, bros. Or if they go there, I'm going to flick them through there. Or if you bowl short, pull them. And it's like, I don't have all that, Hughesy.
I suppose I'm older now, a lot more experienced and wiser now. I think if I look at my career to date, the last 4 years has been a lot of ups and downs and continue to do that. But I just feel a lot more settled and probably calmer as a whole.
Early days, he seemed to be pigeonholed as a first-class cricketer, and that was where his role was. But there's no doubt he had a game that would have played a lot of short-form cricket for Australia as well. He wanted to play white ball cricket for Australia, so when he got that opportunity, he took it with both hands. That was one of the most extraordinary innings, and again set himself up as this player that could play all three forms of the game.
I remember walking out to bat with him, and he said, just look around, how cool is this? I said, yeah, this is what it's all about. We're playing Sri Lanka in an ODI, and he just smacked him.
Great shot. Phil Hughes looking very good indeed.
That is a beauty.
Oh, now hammered through cover. Oh, well played, Hughes.
Hughesy just destroyed Sri Lanka. He got 100 brilliantly.
Oh, there it is. 100 on debut. The first Australian cricketer ever to do that.
Really well played. Right from the first ball he faced today, Phillip Hughes has looked in really good touch.
Yeah, look, I feel like I'm in a good place at the moment. I really wanted to stamp my authority and win the one-day game, and to get 100 on debut, it's something I'll never forget, and it's just a real good feeling, and hopefully I can stay here for a while now.
Oh, powerfully cut. Oh, it's a misfield. Is that going to be it? It is. A century on debut in this series. Now he's got a second.
Just classic Hughesy. Just like made it look easy. Polished off 100, and I'm thinking it just does it every time. Just knows how to score hundreds.
Oh, it's nicely hit. That's huge. And over. Oh, you talk about Macksville clearing that hip. Hughes has got the same ability.
Yeah, look, I've always wanted to get back into the team. I've been, I suppose, around the mix for a number of years now, in and out of the side. So I think the big thing I really want to do is cement my spot in both formats now.
Phillip's in India. It's a tough tour. You really, really got to hang on in India. Ricky Ponting's only ever made 1 century in India. That's how hard it is to bat there.
Oh, that's it. This time he's gone. Doesn't last too long. This one jumps at him like a spinning cobra.
That Indian tour was a tough tour for everyone, and you never really know how you play spin until you tour India when the ball's turning square.
You could score runs, but he's getting found out a little bit in those conditions, and it was tough. We were losing games. You know, shit was hitting the fan, homework gate, all this stuff going on around him.
That was a really tough tour on the field. Yeah, we were both struggling, but I had so much fun on that tour. He was just fun to be around in India.
He'd worked hard and, you know, found a bit of a groove in those final 2 tests.
That'll be a boundary. Created the width by moving leg side. That's a very, very good shot.
Those little problems that had existed in his game had started to be worked out, and the world was his oyster from a cricket point of view.
The older you get, the better you are, I think. You speak to players in the past and, you know, they sometimes say you mature at 28, 29 years of age. So I feel like I'm in a lot better space than I was, you know, 4 years ago. I feel like my game's come along and also mentally it's come along.
And the good news is we're getting ever closer to the start of play today. Day 2, lovely sunny day, but a crucial day for both teams here at Trent Bridge.
That's the one. Oh, he's bowled in. Spin there for Swan. It's gone, Brian.
One of my favourite memories in my life of cricket was when Ashton Agar and Phillip Hughes batted together in the Ashes, and Ashton Agar came in 11.
Well, Agar gets his first run in Test match cricket. I don't know why, to be honest. Why would Phillip Hughes, 21 not out and a recognised batsman, take the single off the last ball, let number 11 face Jimmy Anderson? An odd decision.
Yeah, well, that wasn't the way Phillip played cricket. Because you can do that for an hour and only get a few runs. What's the point? I asked Phillip afterwards, why didn't you just take the strike a bit regularly? He said, Dad, I'd seen him bat in the nets and that. The guy's not a number 11. He said, he can bat.
That's a good shot. Nicely played, nicely timed. Take 4.
I was pretty simple to him. I just said, you know, watch the ball as hard as you can, watch it like a hawk and do your thing, mate.
Well, it's going to be 4. Cracking shot. Short ball from Finn is just put away.
I just remember him batting. I'm like, geez, he's batting really well. Everyone kept talking about Agar, but I was like, but this guy at the other end, he's batting like a genius.
We didn't want to look at the scoreboard too much. I know at times it can be hard to do that, but we tried to just worry about the ball that was in front of us.
It's almost embarrassing, to be quite frank.
That puts a smile on my face. That gives me a tingle, that memory, because that's what we would have talked about, the next ball. All that matters in our life, when we're playing cricket, all that matters is the next ball.
They're ahead, Australia. Who would have believed that? And a 100 partnership.
And there's my 2 little mates, laughing and giggling and having the time of their life against England. Like 2 little kids playing a test match with the freedom and joy that the game should be played with. And that was Hughesy, that was Agar's. Geez, I love that innings.
You know, he batted brilliantly at Trent Bridge. You know, he was unlucky in Lords.
And a big swing and oh, he's got him out! Phillip Hughes reviews it straight away, though. Well, Phillip Hughes is convinced he's not got a feather on this. Well, I'm not too sure there's enough evidence to overturn the on-field decision. Out.
That's well bowled, and that's going to be out. It's going on to hit the stumps. It'll go with the umpire's original decision.
He was like, oh, they're going to drop me, Raz. And I was like, Hughesy, you scored 82 games ago. I can't drop you, man. Like who are they going to bring in?
He probably was the one that, for some reason, always got dropped first.
I think, well, to me, I can't speak for anyone else, it just didn't quite feel right. It's probably the first time I'd seen him bitterly disappointed with selection.
How many times is this going to happen? Like, do I deserve to be here? Will I come back here again?
At that point in time, if you looked across the spectrum, and he's from memory the same age as Steve Smith, or there or thereabouts, a couple of years younger than Dave Warner, who's the best cricketer of those three? Phil Hughes, by far. And so we've had the benefit of seeing what's happened. Steve Smith has become a generational player, one of Australia's greatest ever test batters. Dave Warner has become one of Australia's greatest three-format players and a generational player. Well, Hughesy was that and something. You can only speculate, but my gut tells me that he would have ended a cricket career with statistics in excess of those two and been potentially the best cricketer of that generation.
I think that the great players, what they do is that they know the areas of their game that work really well, but they're always looking to fine-tune. They're always looking to get better. But there is a degree of stubbornness because you can't just chop and change all the time. You've got to know what your blueprint is. And the great players, Phil Hughes knew what his blueprint was, and it might have looked different, but he kept getting the outcomes of runs.
Well, I think we had 26 first-class hundreds by almost 26 years old. I mean, phenomenal.
No, it's mind-blowing. Those numbers are mind-blowing. I was just fascinated by it because he just wanted to get better and better and better.
The thing that set Hughesy apart from everywhere else, yes, he opened the batting at the hardest time to bat, but he also scored runs, big runs.
That innings, his feet, oh man, it was just so good to watch. I hate to say that because he was beating us up, but it was so good to watch.
My highest score was 203 not out. And as good mates, it was always, I don't know what his high score at the time was, but mine was higher. But he was on 203 and he's hit one into the outfield. Run, he's one, and he's looking up, like giving it the yes to the change room, but he run back for two, and he almost got run out by half a pitch because he didn't care. He come off with a big smile on his face, comes straight up to me, he's like, I've got you.
Phil had an innate ability to seize a big moment. I mean, in his words, always say it's time to make a statement, Bruzzy. So the two occasions that come to mind the most would be just before his ODI debut. The other time would be just before his Australia A 100 up in Darwin.
We batted first in that game. It was a pretty good South African bowling attack.
Opening the bowling here for end, Kagiso Rabada.
It didn't matter where they bowled, it just went to the boundary. They were running him bowling bumpers and they were going the journey, slow ball bumpers, and he was hitting them to weird spots as he did, and some of the shots were just outrageous. Well, he averaged the best part of 48 in 90-odd one-day games. Not many people do that.
For Phillip Hughes.
200 just didn't happen in one-day cricket back then.
Yeah. A 100 in a 50-over game. What? How is that possible?
I think we played South Africa in Townsville straight after that in day stuff. He might have got 200 in that even.
You couldn't get him out. And we talk about how his technique was starting to trend at that time and it was strong. Well, he's gone from scoring a 100 in a one-day game, hitting it to all parts, to batting for 10 hours as a bit of an FU. You can't get me out.
I think Hughes' game was only getting better. He was learning more about it. He understood his strengths and weaknesses. And most importantly, he was okay with his strengths and weaknesses.
He was coming back in the side. He was primed and ready to go.
He was obviously going into that Shield game. If Hughesy got runs, he was going to be in. There was messages along the line of, you've got this, play how you always have some fun. Yeah, that was the last back and forth that we had, yeah.
I actually have a text from him from the morning of that game where he said they won't get me out today, and they didn't.
Strong memories, I'll never forget it, you know. Interestingly enough, I'd been on the phone for a long time to Michael Clarke. One of the things that he said to me was, I'm pulling out of the Brisbane Test match. And I said to him, well, the one good thing that's going to come out of this, pup, is that your little mate's 61 not out here at the SCG. He's batting beautifully, and that spot's just waiting for him.
100%. I wasn't going to be available for the first Test match, and Hughesy was going to be the one to come in for me.
We were playing a game at the MCG against WA, and like at tea, I remember seeing the footage. Hughesy got hit in the head is what we got told on the ground. I was like, oh yeah, Hughesy got hit on the head, like that had happened a million times. And anyway, coming into the rooms at the MCG, and I remember it vividly, the footage was on Fox Sports in the rooms, and just seeing Hughesy and knowing that wasn't going to be all right.
I remember that night, Wadey and his wife come over to our place. We're just trying to get as much information as possible. We're talking to Michael Clarke a lot, getting information. We're trying to book flights to get to Sydney.
That's a really tough memory, but they had a whole lot of people who were at the hospital, and it was just like this group of people all there supporting the little brother, and he was little brother to a lot of people.
You wonder why Philip's injury and then subsequent death had such an impact. And I think it's because sport's our safe space. It's that area of our fantasy. If there's violence in sport, it's all controlled and it's a chance to let your emotions out. And Philip embodied that great Australian story, didn't he? He was the kid from the bush. He was the battler. He had that cheeky grin. Everybody knew him. That day at the funeral, he went home and they turned out for him. He always told his teammates about his hometown, and he was always going on about his cows. And I think he would have been pretty chuffed that they all got up there.
The cricket world didn't see the best of Hughesy. He captured the attention on so many occasions, but it was Act One.
He was still only a kid. He was still only young, and he'd played enough international cricket to know what he needed to do, and only a matter of time before he was locked into a spot, and he's played 100 tests. So I've got no doubt that was coming for him.
I think he was ready to thrive. I think just before he passed away, Phillip Hughes was on an absolute heater. I think he'd be one of the great cricketers right now. He'd be 100 tests plus.
But I think as much as anything, he was a ripping bloke.
The memory is of a really bubbly, effervescent, happy, positive young man. When you sit back now and you think of Phil, it puts a smile on your face, which is really nice.
There's not a day that goes by where he doesn't just pop into your thoughts at some stage. Glancing down at the clock and seeing it's 4:08, and there's some strange reminders that pop up at times. You know, a song comes on the radio, so he's always there. They still burn brightly.
Yeah, it's difficult. You probably don't think it at the time, but How often do you do that with someone where you sit down and you actually talk to them for hours? He would be sitting over there changing back grips or redoing shoelaces, talking about post and rail, talking about Vinny and Greg, his mum and dad, non-stop.
He could associate and start talking with anybody, you know what I mean? And yeah, that touches me a bit bad.
Got a tattoo of him on me, and I know he'd love it too. It kind of represented me taking Hughesy on the journey that I had as well. Like, I've played all around the world and represented Australia a bunch more times since Hughesy passed away, and I know, in a weird kind of way, I feel like I brought him along on that journey as well.
I'd be backing him in to still be playing because he was that good. But I'm also thinking that the pull of the farm and his family might well have dragged him back as well, because I know he loved his family greatly and his cattle and that lifestyle. So it wouldn't surprise me too if he might have said, no, enough's enough, I've had enough scoring hundreds.
Since our beautiful Philip's passing, our son Jason got married to Danielle, and they had a son, and they've only just recently had another son. And Megan and Curtis actually live on the farm.
This is the very first property that Philip brought. It is only a, stone throw away from our childhood home, where we all grew up and where my parents still live today. So every paddock and every inch of this farm, he has been around, and we feel Philip all around us. This place was paradise to him.
Philip was someone that I thought he got to 28 or something, he might have said, I'm going to retire. He wasn't one of these ones that sort of always said, I'm going to go until it's too late, but like the cricket would have set him up in what he wanted to do after cricket, you know. He loved his cows, yeah.
I think Philip has his cricket legacy. That is really what he spent his whole childhood wanting. But with this farm, I think there's that element of legacy here for him as well.
I'm very lucky to have all that footage there of Phil. I'll be able to show my two kids. But, yeah, I miss him.
Look, don't get me wrong, he loved his cricket, he loved being away, but he loved coming home.